cultural appropriation.
I got called all sorts of names for wearing the dress.
You actually got death threats. You were called out for appropriating an anime character.
I was told that I was black and not Japanese.
I think imitation is a form of flattery.
If somebody wears their hair like you're wearing it, you put that on the same level as racism.
Same level as white supremacy.
This is one of those topics I used to feel one way about, and now I feel completely different. Let's talk about it.
Oh yeah, Didi got a podcast.
So apparently I accidentally washed this white shirt with my colored clothes, and now it has like a pink tint to it. I don't know if you all will be able to tell from your side, but it's a perfectly good shirt. And I was like, why would I throw away a good shirt? So not only am I going to keep it, but I'm going to wear it for today's episode. Listen, I have a question for you. Can white people be culture vultures? And hold on. Before you all hop in my comment section and want to set me straight on my history and how I'm supposed to feel based on the way I look, what my skin color is, the way I sound, the way I talk, let me say this. I'm well researched on a lot of these topics that I talk about with you all, but I like to still bring it to the people to get different people's perspectives. And I used to feel completely different about this topic until I actually listened to the other side. I actually listened to opposing sides and different perspectives. And a lot of people make a lot of sense with this, right? Because I used to think like the average so-called black American when it came to this, because it's mostly white people that we accuse of cultural appropriation, right? How dare you wear cornrows, or how dare you wear your hat to the side, or wear chains the way that we do, or wear our shoes, or wear your pants the way that we say stuff like that, or how dare you cook food the way that we cook it. And I really used to feel that way because as so-called black Americans, we don't really have a whole lot. So the little bit that we do have, we're really like, we cling on to it and we want to protect it, or so we say we want to protect it, right? Even though I feel like we're the most giving culture that there is. But anyways, and then I started to think about it, and it's like, okay, so if that's the case, is it cultural appropriation when majority, and yes, I said majority, of our so-called black women, not just the celebrities, but the everyday so-called black women in our communities, when they're wearing Brazilian lace fronts? Is that cultural appropriation? Because they're not giving credit to them. And let me say this now, for the sake of this video, cultural appropriation and culture vulture, for the sake of this video, it does not mean people who make money and don't give credit to somebody and pretend like it's theirs and they invented it. That's not what I'm talking about. And a lot of you might think that, well, that's what it means. No, some people simply see cultural appropriation is just doing, wearing, or eating something from another culture. Simply doing it is cultural appropriation, whether you're making money from it, whether you give credit to the people or not. They think that you're appropriating it, right? And you're going to hear a little bit of that in the clip that I'm about to show you from the Dr. Phil show. But I just have some questions for my so-called black Americans. Is it cultural appropriation when we're wearing these skin creams to make ourselves look a lot lighter? Yes, in some cases you're trying to look white. In some cases you're just trying to look light-skinned. Either way, you're trying to look as far away from dark as you can. Why is that? That's my question. Why is it? Right? Is it cultural appropriation when we're getting these nose jobs done? Right? And again, not just our celebrities. If I know everyday people, if they get the money to do it, they're trying to make their nose thinner and stuff. Is that cultural appropriation? Yes, we have many so-called black people with narrow noses, but a lot of us have wider noses. Why do you change your appearance? What's the reasoning behind that? Is it cultural appropriation when we're eating Mexican food and Italian food? A lot of us so-called black Americans eat those foods more than we eat soul food, or what we call soul food. Is that cultural appropriation? Right? I just think it's a lot of hypocrisy, and we try to ignore it for the basis of pointing our finger at the white people. That's how I feel about it. So listen, they talked about this on the Dr. Phil show. But before we go into the clip, I just ask, listen, if you're new to the show, please know that we're thirsty to grow and to drink some of this hot water with lemon. You can help me out by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. But don't worry, I'm going to give you just a sec to do that to help me out. So good. Hey, listen, I appreciate you. Without further ado, let's get into the clip.
I want you to take a look at these pictures for me. Anything jump out at you?
Yes. Yeah. They're in costumes.
Right. They're in costumes. These are all celebrities who have been called out, criticized, and condemned for cultural appropriation. Dr. Neil Lester, a professor of English at Arizona State University, right?
I am, yes.
And you've published, lectured, and taught extensively the area of African American studies. What do you think about appropriation? Do you think this is a real thing, something that people need to be cognizant of? And if so, why?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, because if we in fact are trying to look at the humanity of other people, and we are trying to live in a place where we are trying to be respectful and mindful of folks, then we need to be aware of things that are important to other cultures that don't necessarily look like us or share the same values. So it is a thing, and people need to be aware of.
Can anybody appropriate?
Anybody can appropriate, yes.
Not just white people.
Absolutely. Appropriation is intersectional. So old people can appropriate youth culture can appropriate old folks. People who are not incarcerated can impersonate, prisoners or those who are incarcerated.
So before I even say anything about what he just said, think about the irony in this clip. This man is a professor, Dr. Neil Lester, is a professor of English. There are many people out there that would argue that English is not the native language of many so-called Black Americans, right? So are you cultural appropriating the language? I'm just curious, and I know a lot of you all may not agree with that perspective, but there are many people out there that would say, listen, man, English is not our native language, but you're teaching it. Are you appropriating the language? I'm just curious. I have questions. And imagine how difficult it has to be to keep up with every single thing that you're doing so that you're not appropriating someone else's culture. Old people can appropriate young people. Free people can appropriate people that's in prison. And it's like, is that appropriating or is it something else? Right? Because you're making it out to be a bad thing, but it's like, yes, I believe that you should do your research in some cases when you do certain things. Like, for example, I just got back from Houston. I wouldn't go to Houston, a place I've never been before, and just go to random neighborhoods and just walk around. However, I do my research because maybe I'd get injured or harmed or robbed if I'm wearing certain colors, if I'm doing certain things. So it's important to do your research before you go certain places, absolutely. But for you to say it's appropriating and it's intersectional, man, imagine how difficult it would be. That means we can't do anything because we don't know where it originated from.
Men appropriate women's attire for the sake of funny and mocking. So absolutely anybody can do it, and everybody on some level may have flirted with it.
Okay, but a lot of the time that people that I've seen are called out for this, it's not that they were making fun or mocking in some way. It was just that they had adopted a fashion or a style or whatever.
I would say that's a performance. So if somebody's culture and somebody's identity becomes a performance, then it's reductive. So if you're reducing, for example, say the civil rights movement to an afro, and you wear that, or you wear dreadlock wigs, that Rastafarians may wear, you do that because it's edgy, because it's cool, but ultimately because it's not you. And you're getting some kind of cultural capital from that by doing it.
Once again, just imagine how ridiculous this sounds, though, because what if you're biracial, right? What if one of your parents is white, one of your parents is so-called Black? How are you supposed to walk that fine line, right? Listen, I just want to interrupt for just a sec to say, if you are enjoying this video, I ask that you please hit that like button. If you enjoy my content, if you want to help the channel, please hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm and help pushes my video out there. I would really, really appreciate it. Also, subscribe to my second channel if you have not subscribed yet. Link is in the description.
And who's hurt by that?
Well, it's not a matter of who's hurt by it, it's who's being disrespected by it.
Well, who's being disrespected by it?
A whole culture of people whose identities are wrapped in whatever you're dressing into and can then take off.
Amala, you don't agree?
I don't, no.
You think worrying about appropriation is a waste of time?
I think not only is it somewhat a waste of time, but it's nearly impossible. You just mentioned there are
Exactly.
hundreds of ways that one could appropriate somebody else's culture or their livelihood. And to expect any one human being to keep on top of that throughout their entire life, I think, is an unrealistic ask. And I think imitation is a form of flattery. I appreciate my food by eating it. I appreciate the hair that I wear by wearing it, by putting on the clothes that I wear. And every single item around us in this room could probably be attributed to a certain culture. Do we have to constantly worry about what culture we gain things from?
Does intention have anything to do with
Well, I
it?
guess I didn't hear anything about anybody worrying about it. What I heard, what I hear about when I think about and talk about cultural appropriation is people becoming more aware of it. We could say the same thing about racism, sexism, homophobia. Just because you can't solve it and don't see it at every corner doesn't mean we shouldn't be aware of it and trying to address
Wow,
it.
do you
So,
really put those on the same level?
I absolutely do.
Racism and sexism, you put it on the
Absolutely.
same level as
Absolutely.
cultural appropriation?
That's exactly.
So if somebody wears their hair like you're wearing it, you put that on the same level as racism.
Absolutely. I put that on the same
Wow.
level as white supremacy because white supremacy is intersectional. Read Audre Lorde. It's white, and here's what I'm saying. That's why I started by saying this is about humanity or the lack of humanity. When we're putting on someone else's culture, that is somebody else's identity. So when you're talking about being worried about stuff, I'm talking about this in the context of power and history.
You're Brittany, right? Yes. Do you think Black people appropriate?
I think it's possible for Black people to
Possible?
appropriate a different culture, just because Black culture is the only culture that exists, and every culture has their own boundaries or things that they find offensive and things they want other cultures to respect.
I don't even know where to start with this. First of all, here's my problem with Black culture. What the heck is Black culture? What is it? How is culture a color? How come it's only in America that we refer to things like Black culture, right? If you go anywhere else in the world, then you will find that culture is not based on a color. It's not even based on a race. You sound ridiculous, right? You go anywhere else in the world and you find that culture is based on nationality, right? Religion, ethnicity, right? It's based on organizations. So, for example, if you have a so-called white person that grew up in the urban community in America, and his or her entire life, they grew up around so-called Black people in the ghetto. All they know is the way they talk. All they know is their food. All they know is their lifestyle. All they know is the way that they dress, everything. Is that white person appropriating that culture? You say, well, no, because he grew up there or she grew up there. Okay, if they go on the other side of the country and Black people see them, are they going to see it as appropriating? They are. But they don't even know that person's backstory. It sounds ridiculous. And this is why I say so-called Black Americans, we're the most lost on this planet. And I stand by that. Because we think culture is a color. We don't even know what our culture is. So when we say Black culture, it's as if we're saying all Black people who's born in America, or all Black people in general, you're automatically a part of this culture, but you can't even tell me what the culture is. So if a so-called Black person that has nothing relatable, nothing in common with what you call so-called Black culture, and they're somewhere else, are they a coon? Are they a bootlicker? Are they a sellout, all the terms that you call them? Or are they supposed to automatically apply themselves to what you call Black culture, even though they didn't grow up around Black people, they didn't grow up around that culture? All of that is foreign to them. What are we calling culture here? This is what becomes very confusing to me, and it's hypocritical because all the things that you're saying is appropriating, we do the same stuff. The way that we talk. Something as simple as saying the word like I don't know, like I went to the store and I really like apples, but where did so many people in the South say like so much in their sentences? Where did that originate from? But I see Black people, white people, how do you keep up with this stuff? Right? I think Amala put it perfectly. I think it's a form of flattery. And the most interesting thing is, if you go anywhere else in the world, the people who are actually from that culture, most times are flattered. Right? They're honored that you would wear something, eat something, do something that they do in their culture. Right? They see it as a form of honoring them. Right? Not making fun of them. And if you notice, the professor said men dress up like women to make fun of them.
Men appropriate women's attire for the sake of funny and mocking.
He's being disingenuous. Are you talking about transgenders? Are you talking about drag queens or whatever? Because a lot of times it's not to make fun of them. It's because they really believe that they are that thing, or they're doing it as a form of complimenting them. But they're not doing it in a disrespectful way, right? Y'all up in the comment section and y'all give me y'all thoughts on this. I used to believe in culture appropriation, culture vultures. Who we got? We got Vlad TV, Justin Timberlake, Kim Kardashian. We got Justin Bieber. You got Elvis, right? You got all these popular people. But we're not going to talk about culture appropriation when it comes to everybody else, like so-called Black people. I think it's a form of flattery. I don't believe in it anymore. Y'all give me y'all thoughts below. Until next time, yo. Peace.
Oh yeah, Diddy got a podcast.